Big cities mean big buildings and impressive skylines, right? Well, not always. For a variety of reasons, sometimes major cities end up with underwhelmingly short and boxy looking skylines. This video looks at American cities with the least impressive skylines relative to their population size. Just as a side note, I used a population cutoff of about 350,000 when I was selecting these cities. Starting off the list at number 10, we have Jacksonville, Florida. Despite being the most populous city in the state with nearly 1 million residents, it has a skyline that's surprisingly underwhelming. The city's skyline is dominated by the Bank of America Tower, which stands 617 feet tall. This building, completed in 1990, is the tallest structure in Jacksonville and has actually held that title for over 3 decades. The city's skyline features only 9 buildings that exceed 300 feet in height, a relatively small number compared to other cities of similar size, and even some that are a lot smaller. For example, Richmond, Virginia, a city a quarter the size, has 10 buildings that exceed 300 feet. The reasons for Jacksonville's modest skyline are very multifaceted. The city's vast land area, being the largest city by area in the contiguous United States, has allowed for more horizontal rather than vertical expansion. This sprawling urban development has reduced the need for high-density, high-rise construction in the downtown core. Additionally, Jacksonville's economy, while robust, has not driven the same level of demand for office space and luxury high-rise apartments as seen in other major metropolitan areas. The city's focus on industries such as logistics, finance, and healthcare has not really created the need for high-rise construction. It's worth noting, though, that Jacksonville's skyline is changing. Recent additions like the Peninsula at 437 feet and the Strand at 328 feet show that the city's gradually adding to its vertical profile. However, the pace of high-rise development remains slow compared to faster-growing urban centers. At number 9, we have San Jose, California's third largest city. It too has an underwhelming skyline. It holds the distinction as being the largest city without a building over 300 feet tall. The proximity of the San Jose International Airport has historically imposed strict height regulations, preventing the construction of tall skyscrapers. The city's development pattern over the years has prioritized suburban growth over vertical density. San Jose grew from 17 to 149 square miles, spreading out rather than up. Urban planning strategies further contributed to the city's low-rise character. Policies emphasizing infill development and urban growth boundaries inadvertently maintain the city's horizontal profile. Recent changes, including altered airport flight paths in 2019, now allow for taller buildings. This regulatory shift suggests that San Jose's skyline may gradually start to transform in the coming years. At number 8, we have one of the most well-known short skylines in the world, and that is that of Washington, D.C. It's primarily the result of the Height of Buildings Act, a federal law passed in 1910 that strictly limits building heights in the city. The act restricts most buildings to a maximum of about 130 feet on commercial streets and 90 feet on residential streets. Originally, the law was implemented for practical reasons rather than aesthetic considerations. Over the years, the Height Act has profoundly shaped DC's construction, creating a distinct horizontal skyline that sets it apart from other major U.S. cities. The Act's restrictions have had far-reaching consequences beyond just aesthetics. By preventing upward expansion, the city has been forced to grow outward, leading to urban sprawl and the development of sub-centers in surrounding areas like Roslyn, Virginia, and Silver Spring, Maryland. This horizontal growth also contributed to housing affordability issues and made D.C. one of the top commuter cities in the country. Despite occasional debates about modifying the Height Act, there's always been significant resistance to change. Many residents and officials argue that the height restrictions preserve the city's unique character and protect views of the iconic structures like the Washington Monument and the U.S. Capitol. Recent proposals have included a plan to increase the height limit to 160 feet in some areas in an effort to address downtown revitalization and housing needs. However, any changes made to the Height Act require congressional approval, making modifications a complex and politically challenging task. Next up, we have San Antonio, Texas. It's quite short and unimpressive relative to its population, which ranks among the largest. This is due to a combination of economic, cultural, and regulatory factors. The city lacks a robust corporate presence that typically drives high-rise construction, with a lower median income and fewer major corporate headquarters compared to other large cities in Texas. This economic reality has resulted in a limited demand for tall office buildings and luxury high-rise condos. The tallest structure in San Antonio is the Tower of the Americas at 750 feet, followed by the Marriott River Center at 546 feet and the Westin Center at 444 feet. Only 5 buildings in the city stand over 400 feet tall. These heights pale in comparison to other major Texas cities. San Antonio's total skyscraper height is only 10,273 feet, significantly less than Houston's 30,000 feet, Austin's 23,000 feet, and Dallas's 22,000 feet. While there's no current ordinance limiting building height relative to the Tower of the Americas, the city's development patterns have favored suburban expansion over downtown density. Additionally, San Antonio's commitment to preserving its historical character, particularly around the Alamo, has influenced low-rise construction. The city's focus on affordable, family-oriented housing also contributes to a lack of tall towers, as many residents cannot afford the added costs of high-rise living. On to number 6, we have Raleigh, North Carolina. Its skyline is rather modest compared to some similarly sized cities. The city's tallest building, PNC Plaza, stands 538 feet, completed in 2008. The city was originally laid out in 1792 with a 5-square plan centered around the state capitol. And because of this, Raleigh wasn't really originally designed for skyscrapers. The city's narrow streets and sidewalks reflect its initial purpose as the seat of government rather than a commercial hub. Raleigh's skyline has begun to change dramatically since the 1960s. The city's vertical growth, though, has been largely unplanned, in contrast to nearby cities like Charlotte, which was intentionally developed as a financial center. Despite all this, Raleigh's appetite for taller buildings does appear to be growing. Recent rezonings in areas like the Warehouse District now allow for structures up to 40 stories. The city's history of high-rises dates back to 1908 with the construction of the Masonic Temple, North Carolina's first skyscraper built with steel-reinforced concrete. Today, Raleigh does boast more than 50 high-rise buildings, with 14 of them standing taller than 250 feet. The city's skyline is continuing to evolve, so maybe in the not-too-distant future, it won't show up on a list like this. At number 5, we have Sacramento, California. It too remains remarkably short due to a combination of development challenges and architectural constraints. Unlike more prominent California cities of San Francisco and Los Angeles, Sacramento has maintained a relatively modest vertical profile, with buildings rarely exceeding 400 feet. Despite being in the top 40 in the country in population, the city's aggregate height ranking is down at number 82. The city's zoning regulations play a significant role in constraining architectural ambition. Residential areas are typically restricted to 2-story buildings, while commercial developments face economic barriers that discourage extensive vertical expansion. Sacramento's identity as a government-centric city dominated by state administrative buildings has further contributed to its conservative architectural approach. Economic factors compound these structural limitations. Construction costs increase exponentially with building height, making tall skyscrapers financially challenging for developers. The local real estate market has not typically demanded or supported massive vertical developments, preferring more spread-out urban planning. This approach resulted in a skyline that feels more like an extended suburb than a dense urban center. Like some of the other ones on this list, though, recent proposals suggest a shift in this development style. Developers have begun to explore more ambitious projects that could soon transform Sacramento's skylining, including a proposed 557-foot tower that would significantly exceed the current height limitations. At number 4, we have Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix's skyline is notably short as well, relative to its population due to several factors. The city's vast land area of over 500 square miles has encouraged horizontal rather than vertical expansion. This sprawling development pattern has reduced the need for high-density tall buildings typically found in more compact areas. The city's urban planning approach has also played a role. Phoenix is organized into 15 urban villages, each with its own commercial centers, which has dispersed development across a wider area rather than concentrating it into a single downtown core. Additionally, the prevalence of automobile-centric transportation has allowed residents to live and work across a broader area, further reducing the demand for centralized high-rise developments. Historical factors have contributed to this pattern as well. Phoenix's tallest building, the 483-foot Chase Tower, was completed in 1972 and has held the title as the city's tallest for over 50 years. This lack of new, taller construction is partially due to zoning regulations related to Sky Harbor Airport, which limits building heights in downtown Phoenix. Probably the biggest factor in Phoenix's horizontal development is the abundance of cheap land in the surrounding desert, which has made it far more economically attractive for builders to develop outward rather than upward. This contrasts with cities like Philadelphia, which has 21 buildings taller than Phoenix's tallest, despite having similar populations. On to Fresno, California, which has a very, very short skyline, with the tallest building reaching only 226 feet. This modest height is surprising for a city that serves as the economic hub of California's San Joaquin Valley and has a population over 500,000. The city's tallest structure, the Robert Coyle U.S. Courthouse, stands only 226 feet tall. Followed closely is the Pacific Southwest Building, completed in 1925, at 220 feet tall. Like with a lot of them on this list, land availability in the area has provided ample space for horizontal expansion. Also, seismic considerations relating to California's earthquake risk may have also influenced building heights. The city's economic structure, while significant for the region, hasn't shown the demand for numerous tall office buildings and luxury high-rises. It's interesting in the case of Fresno, California, that the tallest building dates back 100 years. The skyline of Fresno reflects a trend that's seen in many mid-sized American cities, where residential high-rises in the 1 to 200 foot tall range dominate the building stock. To be fair to all the cities on this list, the so-called boring skyline phenomenon is actually a lot more common than the dramatic New York or Chicago skylines that get all the attention. It's important to recognize that skyline height doesn't necessarily equate to economic vitality or quality of life for residents. At number 3, we have Colorado Springs. Despite being a significant city in Colorado, Colorado Springs downtown lacks towering skyscrapers, with the Wells Fargo Tower standing as the tallest building at a mere 247 feet and 16 stories. The city's skyline philosophy stems from a deep reverence for its natural surroundings, particularly the iconic view of Pikes Peak. While no official height restrictions existed in downtown historically, there's been constant community preference for preserving mountain views. Recently, though, the city's begun to wrestle with its urban identity. A proposed 36-story apartment complex sparked significant debate about building heights and downtown density. This proposal represents a potentially dramatic shift from the current underwhelming skyline. For an honorable mention, we have the Los Angeles skyline. It's unquestionably an impressive skyline with 2 buildings over 1,000 feet, 36 buildings over 500 feet, and more than 50 over 400 feet. It makes this list, though, due to its size relative to total population, which ranks second in the country. Despite being the second largest population, its skyline is significantly less impressive than that of a much smaller city like Chicago. Houston is another city that's smaller by population but arguably has a more impressive skyline than LA, ranking higher in total number of buildings over 500 feet. Like most of the West Coast cities on this list, LA is known for its seemingly never-ending suburban sprawl. Because of this, there's less pressure to build tall, and things just tend to spread out more horizontally. To finish up the list, at number 1, we're staying in California at Anaheim. Its large population but unimpressive skyline is the result of a very unique development history and intentional urban planning decisions. The city experienced rapid growth after the construction of Disneyland in 1955, with its population increasing by an astounding 600%. This growth continued steadily, transforming Anaheim from an agricultural community into a bustling urban center. However, the city's skyline remains relatively short due to an anti-skyline ordinance passed in the 1960s. This ordinance, implemented at the request of Walt Disney, prohibited the construction of high-rise buildings that could be seen from inside Disneyland, as Disney wanted to preserve the theme park's atmosphere. As a result, Anaheim was forced to expand outward rather than upward, leading to a more sprawling urban layout. The city's development is also influenced by its transition from agriculture to manufacturing. In the 1960s, Anaheim became a hub for aerospace, electronics, and automotive parts manufacturing, attracting businesses and workers to the area. This industrial focus, combined with the height restriction, contributed to the shorter skyline. Anaheim's growth pattern has been characterized by the development of residential neighborhoods and commercial areas rather than the concentrated downtown core you see in some other cities. The city contains nearly 1,500 acres of parks and open space, accounting for about 5% of its total land area. The emphasis on open spaces and lower density development has further contributed to a lack of a prominent skyline. Despite its large population, Anaheim faces challenges in the future accommodating growth. Anaheim has little room for new development, with city officials noting that, and this is a quote, "Every bit of land in our city is spoken for." This constraint has led to a focus on rezoning and redevelopment rather than new construction, further limiting opportunities for vertical growth. In essence, Anaheim's large population, coupled with its unimpressive skyline, is a product of its unique history, Disney's influence, industrial development, and urban planning decisions that prioritize horizontal expansion over vertical growth.